Investing into the S&P 500 barely beats the money printer. Let me explain. So we all know the numbers. The S&P returns around 10% per year on average, and it is one of the best performing investments in the world. But is that 10% really 10%? No, it's not. You have to first account for inflation. What is the average inflation in the United States in the last 100 years? It is around 3.07%. So the return of the S&P 500 when you implement inflation is actually around 7% per year. But that is not the whole story. Here is what most people don't understand. What we need to measure is not the CPI inflation, it is actually the increase of the money supply. It is how much US dollars have banks printed out of thin air in 1 year. The number is pretty crazy, and in the last 100 years this number has been around 6.7% per year. So banks issue loans using fractional reserve banking and they create new money out of thin air. There is 6.7% more US dollars in the system every single year. Now, what is the return of the S&P 500 if we take into account the increasing money supply? Well, 10% minus 6.7. You get 3.3% and you are barely beating the money printer. So the point of this video was to open your eyes. You're not getting 10% every single year. It's much less if you account for inflation, and then even less if you account for the increasing money supply, the printing of the US dollars out of basically nothing. My conclusion is if you have a good trading edge, you have a much higher chance of beating the money printer and making steady profits even in the times of crisis. So I know a lot of traders made a bunch of money in 2020 when there was a massive sell-off in the stock market. Trading is not for everyone, but if you love the game, you will succeed. What is a realistic return in trading? It is not 100 or 200% per year. The best trader in the world, Jim Simmons, made around 60% per year. But if you can make 15, 20, 25% per year on average, you're already beating the S&P 500 and you're heavily beating the money printer. You are staying ahead of the crowd. If you want to learn more about trading, definitely check out my profile.